Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So in this one here, I wanted to talk about The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon Season 2, and I actually wanted to talk about a possible return for Rick Grimes actually in this show here. Now, obviously this would be a big surprise if it did happen, but I do remember Andrew Lincoln and Norman Reedus hanging out at some point in France, and again, I know Andrew Lincoln does live overseas, right? Like I'm pretty sure he's from Europe, and so it could have just been them hanging out and whatnot, but I know that was like a photo that was going around at some point, and so maybe that's where this is going here. Maybe Rick is actually going to appear in a very short scene with Carol, and maybe that teases some stuff there, or maybe that basically is just, so that we can see Carol and Rick's reunion, right? I think that would be really cool. So yeah, I do want to talk about that, get into a lot of ideas with that, because there's a lot there that we can actually really discuss. So before we go any further, obviously make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all of my Walking Dead content like this, and if you haven't already, definitely go and subscribe to the Empty Minds podcast. That's my podcast that I do have out. We post episodes every single week, and I will be doing a lot of reviews and stuff like that with obviously the people that I'm doing the podcast with. It's like whenever we go see movies, and it might not just be movies and TV shows, there might be like game reviews or other things. It's really not about like one thing specifically. It's actually about a lot of different things. And so, yeah, we're going to be posting more segments and stuff like that from the podcast when we are talking about, like shows like, or not shows, but movies like Late Night with the Devil and etc. So if you do want to subscribe to the podcast, I definitely, we're trying to get to 1,000 subs. It would be really awesome if we could actually get there. Our goal is to get to 1,000 subs in the next like 2 months or so, basically by the year anniversary of this podcast, because yeah, that would just be really cool. And then we'll make a goal at that point for something else. But yeah, I just wanted to shout out the podcast here. If you guys are interested, the link for the podcast will be in the description of this video. But let's actually talk about what I wanted to get into here. And that is the Rick Grimes flashback that we probably or potentially could see here with Carol in The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon Season 2. Now, this obviously only makes sense if Andrew Lincoln did actually show up for filming or something like that. And, with where things sort of ended off, I could see little things like this actually happening, right? Like, because I've been talking about that in my last 2 videos. I don't know if you've watched the last 2 videos. If you haven't, definitely go do so. But if you haven't checked out the last 2 videos, what I was saying was, with Maggie and Negan, and then there's like Carol, and I guess technically Morgan as well. It's kind of unfortunate that because Rick Grimes returned, just when he did in The Ones Who Live, that the next time we see any of these characters reuniting at all, that, it's going to be one of those things where I guess they've all seen Rick already, right? And so we're not going to see that at all. And to me, that is something that is just very unfortunate, right? Like that is something that I think as fans, we really want to see. We want to see the first time these characters have seen each other, even if it's a scene where Carol is just like at her house doing whatever, and then Rick shows up at her house, right? Like I'm trying to picture how the scene could play out, and I feel like that makes the most sense, right? And I think because like Rick, first of all, is going to appear again at some point in the Walking Dead universe, right? Judging by Denai Guerrera's comments and Scott Gimble's comments, they're working on a story right now. There's no like obvious plans to do a season 2 specifically or anything like that. But, with where the story is going to go next, I know Denai Guerrera talked about that, and she said like, our characters would be doing this and that or whatever. So it's really interesting because I think they have an idea of where the story could go next, but a lot of things might have to play out in order for that to happen. And I think if it focuses on anything, it's probably going to be something new and just more focused on Rick and Michonne. And so a lot of the reuniting with characters like, Carol and Morgan and everyone else, we might not get that right away. And so I think Rick showing up in like a flashback scene like this makes the most sense. And when you think of Carol specifically, because she's going to be leaving, I think it makes sense to show us a flashback scene of maybe Carol, say she's like at her apartment or like house or wherever she's going to be living there at the Commonwealth, right? Like say she's just sort of hanging out there, and then she gets a knock at her door and she's like, oh, whatever. And she goes and answers it. And then it's Rick, and she's like, whoa, right? And then Rick just, talks with her about whatever and just kind of explains some stuff, and maybe she talks about, where Daryl is, and Daryl's looking out for you, this and that, and I have to go and find Daryl. And maybe that's sort of the end of the flashback scene, right? And then it cuts to some stuff of, I don't even know. I feel like a lot of this can be related to why Daryl doesn't want to go. Like that's the thing. A scene like this, people could be thinking, well, this is fan servicey or whatever. A scene like this, I don't think so. It would actually be very related, because it seems like based off of the early synopsises anyways for this show, that Daryl doesn't want to go home, but Carol's trying to convince him to go home, right? But he doesn't want to because of stuff going on over there. And so I think a buildup could be, to a flashback of Carol and Rick seeing each other for the first time in a while. And this way, that's sort of, you're not spoiling anything from The The Ones Who Live, because people have already watched that show. There's a lot of things that you could actually do there that would be very, very cool, like really cool. Right. And that just sort of, first of all, we're seeing the reunion scene with Carol and Rick. Really amazing, right? Like that's something that I don't want to miss. I hope that it's not one of those things where Carol is just like, well, I've already seen Rick, right? Like, because Carol's going to bring that up at some point. Carol is going to bring up to Daryl that, Rick made it home, right? That's probably who she was talking about on the radio. So I think it would be really cool to see a scene like that instead of getting a scene where Carol just comes back and is like, yeah, Rick and Michonne are back. I saw them, this and that. They seem very happy. And just that, that would be very unfortunate because fans want to see those moments happen, right? Like that's such a big moment. You want to see that happen. And obviously you couldn't really, technically you probably could have showed it at the end of The Ones Who Live, but they didn't want to do that obviously because they want to save a lot of those bigger reunions with like Daryl and everyone else for the next series. It's just that there's some, reunions with characters like Carol where we're not going to see it. And I think you could give us that here, though, in an actual flashback scene. And I think that would honestly be super incredible. Fans would really love that. It would honestly be really, truly amazing. And I think that is something that they probably could do here in The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon Season 2, The Book of Carol. Now, in terms of what episode, episode 5, maybe that's a possibility because it seems like they do their big flashback episodes around episode 5, right? Like that was the flashback with Gabriel and whatnot. And then in episode, or in Daryl Dixon, episode 5 was the flashback with Carol and Daryl, right? And then in Dead City, I don't know if there was a flashback there with Simon. I don't know if it happened yet in that episode or if that was in episode 4. So maybe it happens a little bit earlier. I'm just trying to look at, is there a possibility based off of these previous seasons, right? So maybe it just happens in another episode. It doesn't really matter the episode, but I just think it would be really cool. I do think it would be really incredible to have that because that's one of those things that I was thinking about, I do think that, and I'll do a video talking about this, like more specifically, just about Daryl and stuff and why I think he's going to be the future of The Walking Dead. But Daryl really is sort of the leader of The Walking Dead, right? Like Rick, yes, he's going to be around here and there, but I feel like because we have to wait a while for the next series, like I don't know when this next series is going to come out or if it's going to be a season 2 of The Ones Who Live. Like my prediction is it's going to be out in like 2 or 3 years. And it's so hard to even say with that either, because like maybe it comes out in like a year and a half, or maybe it's 5 years, right? We don't really know. I don't think it's going to be in 10 years. I think at that point they're not coming back, right? So it's going to be interesting at Comic-Con to hear Gimple talk about, the future of Rick and Michonne, Denai Guerrera and Andrew Lincoln. They're going to be asked about the show at some point over the next year, right? At some point this year, they're going to be asked about those characters again. Are you going to come back to play that and whatnot? And then we'll see based off their answers there what that means. But it's just going to be very interesting over the next little bit here to sort of read into what they're saying. And, is there a possibility of this and that? And obviously right now, the possibility of seeing them is very, very high because they even said that they will come back. They're very, very interested in all that. It's just one of those things where, yeah, we'll have to wait and see in what way, and let's just hope that the story is really, really great. And yeah, we have no official confirmation of it, obviously, but whenever they do that, obviously I will break that down. But the point of all of this, the point I'm trying to make here is that Daryl, if you really look at The Walking Dead, he kind of is the face of the franchise here. And yeah, again, I'll talk about that in another video, but I do think that having Rick show up here and there, doing things like that, it really does help build up Daryl's character a lot more, and it helps Daryl be the lead a lot more here, going forward. And I just think that, yeah, if Rick were to show up in this show, that would be really, really cool. Obviously, it would be a flashback scene, right? Because obviously Carol's going to be in France at that point. And I just think that it makes sense to do something like that because Daryl Dixon Season 2, from what I've been seeing, a lot of the not early reviews, but early, I guess, like impressions from people, because a lot of people have, seen some things from filming and know some stuff. They're saying that, it's a lot better than Season 1 and, it's gonna be really very much mind blowing, and it's gonna really, crank it up to 11, right? Like it's gonna be a lot. I guess basically what you liked in Daryl Dixon Season 1, it's going to be even more intense in that way, right? So I'm excited about that because I also know one thing, or I saw one thing anyways, when it comes to variant walkers and stuff. And yeah, it actually looks like it's going to be even more insane. So like Daryl Dixon Season 2 is going to be a really incredible season. And I think Rick Grimes having a cameo here in this season, I think would be perfect. And I think it just makes sense story-wise, to happen with Carol. So I hope that's what they do. I really do hope that's what they do. And I hope that it happens this season here, because it just again, it makes sense story-wise. Carol's going there. Carol's going to be trying to convince Daryl to come back. Getting a scene like that would be perfect, because the first time we're seeing Carol in a long time. And seeing Rick, honestly, could have been, you know, what I guess made Carol go out there to try and find Daryl, right? I literally could have been why she went out to go and find him. That could have been the start of it here. So it just makes sense story-wise, right? So I want that to be the thing. I really do want that to be the thing. But again, we'll have to wait and see, right? But anyways, I'm going to leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Do you want there to be a cameo scene from Rick Grimes in The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon Season 2? And yeah, just post your predictions and your thoughts about that. So hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.